in this triangle then, right?
I mean, yeah. That's usually how the math works out with this stuff. But yeah.
Okay. I can add. I get it. All right. I am there.
That's not the intention. That's definitely not the intention, but it's usually how it works out.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another conversation. Jason and Justin. Today we are joined by Joel. How are you doing, Joel?
I am doing pretty well, I think, given all the weirdness that surrounds us these days.
Oh, man, weirdness. That's like such an understatement of the lifetime. But I am so excited to talk to you about your career and everything that you've done leading up to today and stuff that you have coming out in the future. I'm super excited because we were going through your IMDb page and you've been associated with a lot of films I have seen. And
really?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
And actually one of my favorites, and I know that it's one of those that's getting a lot of people are revisiting now and starting to really appreciate it, and that's Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Yeah, that's one I've revisited too, because as you probably know, it's gotten a whole new life and a whole new genre than its original, I guess you would call its intent. But I'm kind of proud of that we're how did they put it? We are the first gay horror film, first mainstream gay horror film ever.
What an interesting kind of, that's great. Cool.
We had no idea when we were making the film that all these hidden innuendos and suggestions were there, sort of just subtextually underpinning the whole movie. But when you turn back and you look at it, I mean, I was the second unit director on that, and I remember doing the shower scene with Marshall Bell, where he's basically naked and getting whipped in the butt or slashed in the butt by Freddy Krueger's taloned hands. And well, it was it's a second life for our movie. It was great.
Yeah, they just did a whole documentary on it on Shudder.
Yeah, well, I was asked to participate in one of the documentaries that got a lot of play, and that's actually how I first understood the cultural context of the movie. I was sitting in the chair, and I thought they were just going to ask, how'd you make that bus stand on a pinnacle? And they're going, you do know this was the first gay horror film ever. And I think they just wanted to see my reaction of huh? And it wasn't my proudest moment because I looked kind of like I was a guest producer on that movie. I was completely not aware of what was going on. But it was fun. I enjoyed it.
That's awesome. I got to ask, because you were involved with Wes Craven's Dracula 2000 and also Friday the 13th. Did you get a chance to meet Wes Craven?
Yes. I have had a tortured relationship with Wes. I respect the hell out of him and wish I could have been his friend, but we were both working for a fellow named Bob Weinstein at Dimension Films, and often we were shotgunned together, and sometimes in the worst way possible. I mean, on Dracula 2000, they had basically just bought his name, to put it in front, and he hated the movie. He really did. And even when I wrote the script, it was marked up like the English teacher that he once was. And, every time I accidentally used the word it's instead of what it should have been, it's with an apostrophe. There was a big yellow red circle around it. And I okay, my bad for the grammar, but is this really impacting?
You're just looking for something to get angry about.
The movie. Yeah. And the first screening that we did of the director's cut, we had a friend of ours take the Wes Craven Presents, and it just bannered across the front of the movie as we opened. And then you hung on it, and very slowly the P just started to quiver a little and then just teetered and fell off. And we were left with Wes Craven Resents Dracula 2000.
That's awesome.
And I really wanted to make good with him. I really did. So when he visited the set, it was sort of obligatory since he was the supposed godfather of the movie. I made sure he got a nice hot cup of coffee, a nice director chair to sit in right in front of the set. And I opened up my director chair to sit down next to him, knocked the hot coffee right into his lap, scalding his genitals. And he leapt out cursing and picked up what was left of the coffee and flung it at me, missed, and hit the production manager right in the head. And it was just like, I can't do anything for this guy. I can't. Yeah. And then Bob brought me back on a movie called Curse to actually fill in some trailer moments that were totally like nothing to do with the film. And Wes was, of course, really annoyed. And then we stole an actor that he was going to use for his film to make Pulse later on. And it just went on and on and on. And I just, and then they brought me in to do a rewrite on Scream 4, which was totally a studio thing. So I was the studio hatchet man there too. I mean, I was his curse.
I feel like you were put in positions to not be successful with that relationship, though.
Yes. there was a point way toward the end of our time together when he kind of looked at me and he said, "You're not all that bad."
Oh, well.
And I took that to be like, oh, validation finally. My career is complete now.
But that's cool though. You did get to do some writing on Scream 4. That's amazing. I think that's a very underrated sequel. But you also were a producer of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yes. That was a little bit of a while ago.
But it's still, I mean, the legacy behind that film is huge.
I still love it, except that I always use that film as a reminder that, none of us are visionaries. We do our best, and then we hope that people respond to it. But when we made that movie, the entire executive brass, when we first showed it to them, they hated it so badly they dumped the film.
That's wild.
And it wound up in this little upstart company called Nelson Entertainment, who took it upon themselves to pull out whatever pocket change they had and gamble on a research screening, and it tested through the roof. But nobody had the faith in it to even try that at the studio that really bankrolled the movie for what was then quite a lot for an indie film. But that's the creative process, I guess.
So I guess were involved at all with the young Keanu Reeves? Because he's a hot topic right now. He's always been, but like it seems more so now than ever.
Well, only insofar as we chose him. I mean, he was the one unanimous casting choice of the producers and the director. That everything else was like, no, I want this, no, I want that. But everybody agreed on Keanu. He was a revelation, and I obviously he's become something of an icon. But he really, through all of the films that I've seen him do, it's really been Bill and Ted and The Matrix guy. And that's sort of his. He likes to be in those two little pockets, I think.
Well, now he's in the John Wick pocket too.
Yeah, which is I think that's sort of an extension of the Matrix guy.
Yeah, it's the same thing, I think.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
Fine.
A little more gravity involved in the way he kicks ass, but otherwise, yeah.
I have to ask, and this is, I mean, you delved into the Star Trek world. How was that with Trekkies? Like, how was that whole thing? How was the whole movie?
Confession, I am a fraud. My company made the film, and I was one of the producers on it. But when the director, Roger Nygaard, who is one of my best friends and is a real visionary on so many levels, but he brought this idea to me about like, okay, we're going to showcase Star Trek fans, and we're going to show how silly they are. And I'm thinking, well, no, okay, who's going to watch this? Because who wants to be made a fool on camera for thousands and what turned out to be millions of people? And the answer is Trekkies. They loved it. The more they looked like just complete village idiots, the more they just bought into it and told their friends. And that was like another lesson learned in the process, that I was so, just because I have an eggshell ego doesn't mean that other people can't laugh at themselves, you know? And so that movie succeeded despite me. Really.
Well, I mean, you delved into the sequel. How was that? I mean, was it fun revisiting the whole thing, or was it?
No, because everybody was so angry that I was such a doomsayer that when it came to having a real budget to make the second one, my producing partner, Mike Leahy, took the job of accompanying Roger around the world. You know, basically staying in first class hotels and meeting all the cool people and going to all the cool countries and staying in all the cool Rivieras. And I was left, you know, with a t-shirt.
Man, Joel, you're getting the hose on a lot of these.
Yeah, no,
here,
it's I'm trying to explain how this has not been like a glorious cakewalk for me.
So is horror one of your favorite genres, or is it just one that you've been lucky enough to work in?
The answer is yes. I guess to put it in sort of blunt terms, I like making horror films more than any other kind of movie because there's so many toys involved. But by the time it's ended, I don't revisit those movies as much because they're kind of confections. They're like there to like get a couple shot gags. What one of my bosses once called liftoff is, if you don't get liftoff 5 or 6 times in the movie, then you failed. And so it's almost it's more of a mechanical exercise, if that makes sense. Whereas some of the other genres that are more character driven, I find it as I get older, I'm more drawn to those that are just like, and some of them are horror films. Like The Others is one of my favorite movies of any.
Oh, it's so good, so good.
And I jealous that I never got to make a movie like that. Yeah.
Oh man, that twist at the end. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it has everything.
So
it has
yeah.
the draw, it has the mood, it has the every dynamic works there. And that's what I love. And when a movie works on all cylinders.
I will say you made one of my favorite funny horror movies in Feast. Because I when I first saw that movie, I died laughing. It was so good.
Well, you will be happy to know, Justin, that we got the team back together and we're making a Feast-inspired movie called 7 Cemeteries, shooting next month. And John Gallagher's directing again. I wrote the script, and Danny Trejo's going to play the kind of Yul Brynner-ish part of the Magnificent Seven.
That's awesome. I'm really excited.
And the hook is that Trejo gets out of prison, not a stretch. And he's trying to round up his posse to save this ranch from a bunch of modern day desperados and drug lords and the ilk, and realizes they're all dead. But with the help of a Mexican bruja, that doesn't stop him from getting his crew back together. So it's kind of like a bunch of dead tough guys who really are kind of pissed off that they have to go on one last mission, and becomes more like herding cats than a big sort of heroic adventure. But I think it's going to be fun. It has that same kind of inspired idiocy that Feast did.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, I laughed so hard in Feast. I'm looking very much forward to it.
Justin messaged me and goes, he made young Justin's favorite movie and older Justin's favorite movie. It was Dracula 2000 and the Feast.
Okay, well, I'm on the verge of making ancient Justin's favorite
That's right,
movie.
old Justin. We're getting there. This will be great.
Nice. So how involved with the Start of the Prophecy series were you? And I see that you directed a couple of them as well.
Greg Wyden, who I have leached off of my entire career, was the idea behind the Prophecy series, and Backdraft and Highlander. I did a couple Highlander movies and wrote one of those as well. But Greg and I were friends, and he had this script that was just, well, I hope you've seen it. It's just crazy inspired. It was a horror version of Milton's Paradise Lost. For all you guys that I know have read that cover to cover, I probably don't need to tell you anything about the story, but for those few of you who haven't read it, 600 pages of medieval lyric poetry. The hook is that Satan and God used to be like brothers. And as sort of the Bible tells us, they sort of had a falling out, and Lucifer fell and hell was created. And now Gabriel, God's sort of right-hand angel, is feeling that same sense of estrangement with God. And he is particularly jealous because this little event called, I think, the Nicene Council of 400 AD, decided that for the first time humans were more exalted than angels in God's eye. And so the angels have just become supremely jealous of humans and want to sort of exterminate them. And so it's this sort of weird theological political intrigue going on planet Earth. And the whole hook of it is that Lucifer kind of comes over to our side because he doesn't want the competition of Gabriel starting another hell. And I just thought, like, once my brain slowed down to sort of absorb all that, it was just like, whatever I need to do to get this movie made. And we walked through fire to do it, because like the studios were going, okay, we like the angels fighting people, back and forth battle stuff, but all that theological stuff, can we just get rid of that? Just have winged demons versus humans? I'm going, no, that's kind of like not what we wanted. And we whined until the guy named Robbie Little scared up enough money to make it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and one of my favorite horror franchises, which is Pulse. Were you involved with the first one or just the second and third one?
Oh, no, all of them. I directed second and third, but which was a weird experiment in green screen mayhem. But the first one was a fairly well-funded for a horror film remake of Cairo. Was it the name of the Japanese film?
I think so.
And I'm proud of Pulse. I mean, we had a great cast, and I think the director got some great mood out of it, and it was fun. But we did what all Americans try to do, which is take like a Japanese horror inspiration, which is a mood piece, completely without explanation, how these otherworldly entities come into our world and cause death and destruction. We tried to explain it all, scientifically and rationally, and that sometimes just don't try. That's one of my morals of horror movies, is don't try to explain where the creature from Feast came from.
Yeah, the
mystery
mystery's part
through
of the
the
fun.
window.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was another learning experience, adapting the Japanese horror genre.
I personally like that one. I like the whole franchise, actually. A young Kristen Bell, too, in the first one. And Ian Somerhalder.
Yes. Yeah. That was the guy we stole from Wes, who was doing another film with Ian. And
making friends all over the place.
I'm gonna pay in the next life when Wes gets his hands on me. But anyway.
So what was it like working on Hellraiser? I mean, that's a pretty iconic brand name. What was it like?
It is. Hellraiser is, there's two franchises that I've done too many of, Hellraiser and Children of the Corn. And there is a point when somebody's got to just tell you to stop. And the fans did. I mean, we used to get like, they weren't writing the happiest reviews of our work there toward the end. But it's a give or take situation, because they really want to see the next episode so badly of what's Pinhead going to do next, and what other things are the kids in the corn going to do besides sleuth around and swing sickles at people? But for me, I started off like anybody else, like, yeah, this is such a cool franchise, and I am so stoked to be involved in it. And to be honest, at a certain point, it became a job, and you never want that to ever happen with a film, because films are all about passion. You just got to live and breathe it and bleed for it to make it something real.
So you've been a producer on a bunch of films. Is there any like specific memory or something that's been like really memorable on a set or anything like that really sticks with you?
A lot of my best memories are things that were they were confrontations, because they're often the most, especially when I'm producing. You know, I direct and write as well, but when I'm producing, I'm just basically a repository of complaints. You know, people, I'm the complaint box that people stick their little issues into. And a lot of actors, as you no doubt know, are kind of needful and kind of think they're entitled to more than human beings generally should expect. And working with Christopher Walken was a totally different experience. He was a guy who is the consummate professional, but he doesn't put up with any bullshit by anybody else. And if you don't know your job, he'll rip your throat out. And there was one point on the original Prophecy where I don't even remember what the issue was. I just remember the feeling I had when he said to me in his Walken voice, and I'm one of the few people that can't do Walken.
I can't either. I've tried.
So I'm not even going to try. I'll do you guys a favor. But he takes me, he says, Joel, you know, just really nice. Just walk with me for a second. And we're out in the middle of the desert. So we walk out into the desert, away from out of earshot, out of sight. And I think, well, like, what's this all about? Is he going to tell me a story? Is he going to like ask me to produce this next movie? I mean, what is this? And we stop, and he turns on me and he says, this is the most fucked up, asinine, amateur, bitch fest of a movie I've ever worked on. I mean, I don't know how you guys even got this thing together and where you found what swamp you pulled these people. I mean, he's just foaming, man. Yeah. And if this, whatever it was, if this ever happens again, if it ever even comes close to happening, if it even gets near me, if I even smell or hear or even know it's happening somewhere, I'm out of here. And you will just, your film will die. And then he stopped and he goes, do we understand each other? And I said, yeah, we do. And he goes, good. Okay, come on, Joel, let's go back. And we walked back like besties, and he went back to work and did a brilliant job. But as stunned as I was by what he did, I also appreciated it, because he didn't want to embarrass me in front of anybody else. He wanted to get his point across with a couple extra exclamation points. And then he was done with it. He had said his piece, and he was totally back to being the professional guy. And I thought, you know, if you're going to have a meltdown, that's the way to do it. Mm-hmm. Just calculate it, do it where it has the most impact, and don't leave a lasting stain where you just did what you did. And that lingered with me. At first it was rage, and it turned, like, in the course of an hour, into appreciation. It was the weirdest feeling I've ever had as a producer.
Well, unless it turned around, because he came back for sequels.
Yeah, no, he did. And whatever it was that we did, it never happened again. I can assure you that.
So tell us about My Best Worst Adventure. Well,
as you no doubt already probably figured out, it's a little different from my normal stock and trade. I was doing a little horror thriller called Cam to Cam in Bangkok. And I was sitting on set one day with the producer. I was directing that one and talking about her life growing up in the north of Thailand in this tiny little village near the Cambodian border, where they, for recreation, these kids, like 8-year-old kids, are racing water buffaloes, which is basically like sitting on top of a stampeding bunch of bulls that are running as fast as horses, not nearly as controllable. And there's no saddle or bridle or anything to hang on to. This sport is absolutely insane. And if you fall off, good luck, because there's a bunch of trampling bulls coming up behind you. It's like the running of the bulls, but you're on top of them instead. And I couldn't get that out of my head. So I just sort of took what for me is very rarely an opportunity to write a movie that comes out of a character rather than a plot line. And because horror films and genre films and comedies, teen comedies and all that, they're very plot driven. Here was a chance to actually explore it from the character's point of view. I took my alter ego, a 13-year-old bitchy little girl, and plucked her out of Los Angeles and dropped her in the middle of this world, and then kind of used my horror chops to kind of imagine what it would be like if you're, living on an alien planet and you've just been sort of dropped down into this completely frightening and overwhelming place. And these people are doing these insane things like the buffalo racing, and there's, she's watching the brutality of the parents with their kids. She's watching bullying at school. She's watching people just acting completely outside her frame of reference. And gradually you start to see that these people aren't insane, that they're actually doing something that is more socially cohesive and fulfilling than the stuff we pretend to do as families and as members of a community. And how it all wove together was just really, for me, the fun part of just telling a different kind of horror story about real people.
That's awesome. I can't wait to check it out. When does it come out?
It's coming out September 1st on pay-per-view, and shortly thereafter streaming to all the usual platforms, which boggles my mind now how many there are. I used to
a ton. Yeah.
We would just like make the film, goes to theater for a little while, and then winds up on DVD, and like, okay, how'd that go? Now it's like hundreds. And so rather than like lay out that list, I think people are more sophisticated than I am in finding it just by knowing that it's called My Best Worst Adventure. And, at My Best Worst ADV Twitter, I think it is. And it's My Best Worst Adventure on Facebook. And I think if you Google it, it shows up everywhere. And we're getting great reviews, which is also something I don't always get with my 15th sequel of Children of the Corn. So that's also kind of really satisfying to see that something that I responded to, that other people are responding to as well. And it's quite easily the movie I'm most proud of having been involved in.
I can't wait to check it out. I know
that's awesome.
You probably can't either, because we're both huge fans of the movies that you've made.
Yeah, so far so good in my book.
I'm hoping, but not entirely 100% convinced that it's going to supplant Feast for you, Justin. But if it can get close, my job is done.
So, Joel, where can everybody find you on the social medias?
I just got just because I knew you were going to ask me that question, I got a Twitter page, which, how do you say it? It's at Joel Soisson, my name, JoelSoisson. It's the Frenchy version. And now I guess I got to put stuff on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you check it out, it will have stuff on it. Links to things. I don't know if you're
just have a coming soon sign and just call it a day.
Yeah. I think when you brought up Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, people did probably figure out how old I am, and they can forgive my lack of social media clarity here.
I do have one more question to ask you, though.
And we are on Facebook, by the way. I was just reminded.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I'm glad you said something about that. Cool. I'm just thinking about like the whole Scarlett Johansson lawsuit to Disney and things like that. And you mentioned a bunch of different streaming sites. Do you think the splitting of theater and streaming is a good thing for media or movies in general? Or do you have an opinion on it?
I did, and like my opinions on just about everything, it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
I love going to theaters, and
me too.
So many films now that aren't Marvel movies don't even have a chance. No matter how good they are, they just don't make it anymore. Particularly independent movies, because of the death of the indie theaters. And I think the whole COVID shutdown just decimated that part of the industry even further. And anything that further destroys the theatrical experience, which I think day and date type stuff does, it's sad if it isn't inevitable. I'm not sure anything we do right now to prop up theaters is in the end going to bring them back to their heyday. I think there'll always be a few in your city and one in your town if you're lucky, but that experience is when the screens in theaters are getting smaller and the screens in houses are getting bigger. I mean, how's that not going to kill theaters, even without the streaming simultaneous thing going on?
Yeah, I'm a theater person too. I just saw Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds, and I saw it in the theaters. It was so much fun being in a theater again, laughing with a bunch of people. But then on the other side of that, I know a lot of people that are finding indie films because they're becoming more available on like Amazon or Netflix or Hulu.
Yeah. Oh, that's certainly the case with my stuff. Some of which doesn't make it to theaters, or a lot of times we'll have a vanity release, where you book a weekend at 6 theaters, which gets you the sort of the feeling, it had a theater. No, it didn't. You're just sort of stroking yourself. But that experience, and quite often we get, up until recently, we were getting that thrill from festivals like this film. I went around the world with it on the festival circuit, and we were getting awards and feedback and stuff. But the thing that was the most satisfying, which I lost for a while on some of these sequels that I was doing, was that feeling of being in a theater, the lights go down, and exactly what you're talking about, Jason, where you're actually feeling like you're it's more of an experience. And we had people on their feet screaming back at the screen and crying and laughing, all those, saccharine cliched emotions. But when you're sitting next to it, it's real. You just swell within that enthusiasm,
Yeah, no, it's something about having a good cry with somebody next to you, or a laugh, or a fright in the theater. I get it. I'm a huge fan. I got the AMC Stubs reward where I can go to see 3 movies a week for a month, like every week. And I go to the theater as much as I can. But I also understand
good for you,
the plus side of being at home watching movies. So, I mean, there's good on either side, but I completely agree with you. I would be so sad if theaters went away.
I think nothing beats watching a horror movie with 50 strangers and everyone being scared in the same, like, you know what I mean? Everyone's like, oh gosh.
Yeah. No.
I probably would have cried if I found out Scream 5 was just going to my house, because I've seen all the screams in the theater. And I'm being in the theater for 5 because I'm curious. I'm curious what a non-Wes Craven Scream is going to look like. And but yeah,
I am too.
You are probably our favorite interview of the year. I could tell just by looking at Justin's face. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute delight, and I hope we can get you on again when Danny Trejo movie comes out.
I hope so. But how can I not be Justin's favorite if I've got like two of his favorite
That's right.
films
You're in there. You're right in
that
there.
bookend his
You're
adult
in there.
life.
Yeah, yeah.
The 3, because he's a Bill and Ted fan.
Listen,
too.
I watched Feast
I know.
for every day for like a week, and my friends can back that. The fact that the superhero or the hero came in, they got murdered out the window. I died laughing every time that happened.
It is the first time in 2 years of doing this with Justin that he has texted me about somebody's IMDb page.
Yeah, I was like, "Hey, this dude did Feast.
That's
I like
hilarious.
Feast a lot."
Well, I have to leave you with this, Justin, because that was made by Dimension Films, part of the Weinstein Company, and the point guy was Bob Weinstein, the guy I mostly have worked with. Only once with Harvey, and he fired me on that show, so there was no love lost there. But we made the film. Bob loved it. He was over the moon. It's going to be thousands of theaters, and we're going to rake up with this, and it's going to be so great. And I love it. I can't say enough good about it. Harvey watched the movie, and it's just said, this isn't even worth going to theaters. Nah, we're not going to do anything with this. Give them a 200 if they insist on it, but shelve this. It's a loser. And so I understand Harvey pissed some other people off somewhere along the way. But that started me down the road of being the first Harvey hater. Okay.
I can get behind that statement.
All right. I just want that. I want that.
I appreciate that
mantle.
I think all of America is behind you on that statement.
I know.
Joel,
but
first Harvey hater.
Just as we say in the Highlander trade, there can only be one. And I am.
You got it.
I am the original Harvey hater. So I just wanted to lay that out there.
Put it on your
I should do that.
Yeah. Have a whole page dedicated to it.
Everybody check out Joel. He's done a lot of stuff. I'll put the link to the upcoming movie and everything in the description below. Follow us at 3 Geeks Podcast, and everybody have a great evening.